Good afternoon. Don't leave. This is going to be a really, really good storytelling. So sit in your seat for a few more minutes. I know it's been a long day. Good afternoon. I'm Nancy Eberhard. I'm the Executive Director of Pro Bono Partnership. And I'm very pleased to introduce our next storyteller, Christine Gritman. But first, I have been encouraged to say a few words about our fantastic organization. Now, I know from looking around the room, talking to people, that we have a lot of our partners and collaborators and clients and supporters here in this room. So a lot of you know us, but if you don't, Pro Bono Partnership provides high-quality legal assistance to nonprofits in Westchester and Putnam counties, as well as throughout the suburban New York State and all of Connecticut and New Jersey. Since 1997, the partnership has assisted 4,000 community-based nonprofits with thousands of legal matters. We help with strengthening governance, managing risk, increasing capacity. As one of my colleagues said today, we really love when you call us when you have a legal question or potential issue. Not when you have a problem, it's a full-blown problem and it's a legal problem. Call us first, because we're really there to help you with preventive maintenance as much as we can in the legal arena. We provide millions of dollars in free legal services to nonprofits every year through the services of our wonderful staff attorneys, as well as over 1,400 volunteer lawyers. We also offer a wide variety of webinars on legal topics, and we send out emails with alerts about legal issues that are important to nonprofits and we think you should know about. So if you're not already connected with us, if you're not already a client or getting our emails, please come and talk to us. Now to our speaker. With over 20 years of experience with brands big and small, Christine Gritman knows how to define, refine, and rock out a brand to get noticed. She empowers professionals to step into their personal brands in a bigger and bolder way on social media, and provides brand strategy and training for professionals who are ready to level up. Her website, Gritman.com, says, "Become known for what you know best." And I think that's a goal for all of us, for ourselves personally and for our organizations. I also think about what the amazing Carla Harris said earlier about who our stakeholders are. They are our staff and our funders and our clients, but they're also the community at large. And how do we tell them our story? How do we let them know what we do, what we're experts in, what we can help with, and why we're in the community? And I think that's really going to be exciting, and you're going to hear some great stuff from Christine today. So I know this last event of the day will keep you on the edge of your seats. Christine's TED-style talk is titled Storytelling Through the Use of Social Media. So please join me in welcoming Christine Gritman.
Clap along if you feel like happiness is true. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you know.
Hi there. Thank you for sticking around. I know it's afternoon slump time, but hopefully we can all help keep each other awake. So, as some of you know, several years ago, I was a local journalist. I wrote for the Journal News, and I loved telling stories and amplifying the stories of people who were doing incredible things in our communities. And, of course, as a result of that, I started getting invited to things. People wanted me at their business events, at their art events, and very much at their nonprofit events. Why? Because they wanted their story to be told on the incredible amplification platform that I had access to. So that was great. I needed stories to tell. They had stories to tell. It worked out well for everybody. Wondering where my slide is. And then I noticed a shift. I noticed over time, nope. All right. Boop, boop. Nope. Okay. I noticed over time that platform shifted. People still wanted to be in the news, obviously. That's incredible amplification. That's great social proof and sort of legitimacy. Very valuable. But I started noticing that a lot of organizations were caring more about getting on social media, about having people present at their events or involved in their fundraisers who had social media presences. Not necessarily huge ones. I didn't have a bajillion followers then, and I certainly don't now. It doesn't need to be a bajillion followers. They recognized that social media was a unique tool for getting their stories out there and for getting other people to incorporate their organization and their cause into their own stories. Now, why is this valuable? If you look at the circulation of a newspaper versus, some average person's social media following, it doesn't really seem like they'd be at all comparable points of amplification. But think about your mindset when you're reading the news, whether it's on paper or on the internet. You're in a state where you are consuming information with your mind. It goes in, maybe some of it stays in there, maybe some of it goes out, but you're basically a vessel. Now think about social media. When people go to social media, they're not there necessarily for information. They're there for people. They're there for human connection. And how do humans connect? Humans connect through stories. Stories are what makes the abstract real for us. When we see a story, when we're reading just a book, even if it's a fictional novel or something, part of the agreement there is that we are opening ourselves to be emotionally impacted by that story. Who here has cried during a movie or a book or something or a TV show that we know is fictional? Like, we know this story isn't really happening. And yet part of the deal when we're consuming a story is that it is not just our heads getting involved. We are opening ourselves in an emotional way. The same happens on social media. We're there to engage with humans and to engage with their stories and to be moved by them. As we know, there's a lot out there on social media. There's a lot of nonsense out there on social media. A lot of people, and especially organizations, businesses, nonprofits, all of it, the thought when it comes to what do we put on social media tends to immediately go to content, informative content. What do we want people to know? What do we want to tell them? But that's not what sinks in as deeply on social media. Informative content is very important. You should certainly have it all over your website. You should have it easily accessible. But information is not what gets people to care, especially given that they have so many things coming at them at all times, trying to get them to pay attention. There's advertising. There's, people's own personal stuff they've got going on. There's businesses. There are causes. There are more causes out there, more good and worthy causes than any one human being has the time, energy, or money to possibly dedicate to. So how do they choose to dedicate their resources and their energy and their attention to our cause? Stories. And the most impactful form of story at all is not the one that we ourselves tell. It's the stories of others. The stories that we tell only go as far as us. They only go as far as that which we are already impacting. That ripple is kind of one central point of ripple. But when we have other people telling our stories, or even when we are telling other people's stories, that creates so many more connection points that could draw somebody in. And we have no idea what's going to hit. Maybe it's that someone knows the person the story's about, or the person telling the story. That's an obvious connection point. Less obvious connection points are, maybe there's someone out there who knows someone with a similar story. Maybe there's someone out there who can see themselves in that story. Maybe there's someone out there for whom that story hits upon their deepest fear, or just something that they really, really care about. You don't know what's going to hit. That's why it really matters to diversify your stories and to really, really, be trying to curate that storytelling as much as you can as an organization. A few ways that you can do that. One of them, the most obvious and also frequently the most fraught, is the stories of people who your organization has helped. That can be complicated. I will address that in a moment. But that is, of course, the most impactful form of story, because that's a direct, hey, I had this problem, this organization had this solution for me, and now things are great. That's the most obvious, impactful form of story. That's something where people can relate to the problem, they feel the emotions of that problem, and then they rejoice in the fact that that person had that problem solved, and you get to be the good guy. That can be complicated. A lot of times nonprofits are helping people through not the greatest situations in their lives. Perhaps there are issues of privacy, of security, of pride. There's a lot of reasons why someone may not want to share their story directly who you've helped. There's a few ways around that. I saw a nonprofit recently. I loved the way they handled this. It's an organization that helps children. And they told a child's story with their permission, the permission of their parents, but they didn't show the child. They had an illustration. They actually had a little animation, which was great. That was sort of illustrating the story. And they didn't have the child's voice reading it either. They had an adult who was reading. They said that this is a story from, 12-year-old Jacob or whatever. So it was still a first-person narrative. We still got to hear the account of the person who was helped. But their privacy was maintained. They didn't have to kind of go through that all over again. It was a really artful way of doing it. But of course, another way of illustrating that is to go one step out and to hear the stories of the loved ones of people who were helped. Again, with everyone's permission, with everyone's privacy secured. But, perhaps there is a family member of someone who was helped by an organization. They've got a story. You certainly impacted their life. You helped someone they love. I'm sure that in many cases, they would be happy to share their story. Ideally, they'd share their story on their own social media, and then you could also reshare it as your organization. That is the best case scenario, because then you're primarily reaching all these people you're not already in contact with. You're reaching their people who already have an emotional in to that story. These are people who already care about that person's story. They're already rooting for them. They're already happy that it had a happy ending. And again, you're the good guy in that story. They're going to definitely be more interested in helping you create more such stories. But again, sometimes they're not comfortable. You can go kind of a step removed from there, ask for permission to share their story, maybe without identifying information, but it still has all those story beats that could potentially connect somebody. And then yet another wonderful, wonderful source, and these people are the most likely to be willing to share their stories because it's often a less vulnerable situation. Stories of the people who work with your organization, whether they are staff, volunteers, donors, your board, all of those people. As I mentioned before, there's a lot of causes out there vying for the same attention. Why did they give theirs to you? Everyone has their why. In some cases, again, it may be pretty vulnerable. It may be a situation where they were helped by you. It may be a situation where they had a situation in their life where they wished that an organization like yours had been able to help them. So again, that can get very personal, but do not let all the reasons someone may say no to sharing their story prevent you from opening yourself to people being able to say yes, because those are some incredible stories there. And hearing the why of the people who are doing the work, the people who are actively supporting your organization, that can be incredibly powerful. And they may tell stories you didn't even know. That's also information for you to know what is getting through to people, what is moving them, what is mattering to them. And again, that's a situation where you really want to leverage their networks if you can. You want them to tell the story if they're willing, or perhaps with their permission, you could tell their story. You can highlight their work as an organization. You can say, if you're supporting us, you might wonder where your donations, where your energy, where your advocacy is going. Here's someone who's doing the work. That's a fantastic story to tell. So if you're not already encouraging your staff, your board, your volunteers, all of those folks to share your existing social media posts, to share your existing stories of what's going on, your events, your fundraisers, all of that, please do, at bare minimum, make sure you're encouraging them to share your stories that you're already telling with their network, because that, of course, ripples out and does a lot of work. Plus, they're telling that story, they're sharing that story with people who are already invested in their story, which will get you in a lot, it'll get you broader reach, but it'll also get you deeper reach. But in addition to that, there's also the fact that, in addition to that, there's also the fact that you can tell those stories and it's just gonna be so much more moving. It has so many more points to emotional entry for people to hear the real story of the work you're doing. As for how to tell that story, there's lots of ways to do that on social media. Anything on social media, ultimately, when you think about it, is telling a story. A status update is a story. A photograph is certainly a story. A picture speaks 1,000 words. A video is obviously a story, as is audio. So it's just about figuring out how you're going to tell those stories, how you can leverage them, and then, taking advantage of the people, not taking advantage of people, but taking advantage, definitely seizing the opportunity of all of those stories that are already out there. The stories that are out there about the lives you're already touching. The stories you may not even be hearing, you may not even know about. And by unlocking those, by curating those, by encouraging them, by cultivating them, by creating a storytelling culture among the supporters of your organization and among your organization itself, it's really, kind of picture a pond, if you will. And you just throw one stone into the pond, yes, there's some ripples. You can create a rainstorm with that kind of culture if you really develop that habit of making sure that your supporters are telling stories, you are telling stories, you are gathering stories to retell. Yes. So I'm going to bring back to a negative thing about social media. And I know that this is a lot of why some people don't tell their stories on social media. This is really all about perspective. Sometimes people don't want to put their stories on social media because they're afraid of backlash. They're afraid people will think they're fishing for attention. They're afraid that people won't listen or they'll be dismissive. Here's the thing to think about. Remember before how I mentioned how organizations wanted me at their events so I could help boost the signal? Well, years ago, I applied to a community leadership program. It was not Leadership Westchester. And I didn't get in. And I received a very nasty, anonymous note mailed to my home that basically said I wasn't actually worthy to be in photographs on social media with these community change makers because I clearly wasn't doing anything. They said, just because you stick your mug into every possible Facebook photo and then like every post that every other person does doesn't make you qualified. Try doing something. Serve your community first with dignity and shun the publicity until you have earned it. Yes, I received this letter to my home anonymously. It was super fun. So first of all, clearly they didn't realize I actually was doing work. I just wasn't posting pictures of me picking up garbage and stuffing envelopes and sorting donations. When you show a lot online, people assume you're showing everything, thus you must not be doing other things. Here's the thing they fundamentally misunderstood. I was not hopping into other people's pictures. I was drawing them into mine. I was not asking other people for publicity. I was giving publicity to other people and sharing their stories. That one person misunderstood. You know who didn't misunderstand? All the people who hopped into my DMs asking me for more information about these organizations. I helped these organizations raise thousands of dollars. I brought volunteers to them. I brought donations of goods and services to them. I brought board members to them. There are people sitting on boards who I brought to those organizations. And yes, I even helped an organization get their director of development because I posted the job opening on Facebook. And she wrote to me, she said, "Hey, so I know you're involved with this organization. Can you tell me some stuff about it?" And I told her stories. I told her stories not only of my experiences with the organization, but more importantly, of the experiences I knew other people had had with the organization. I told stories of the work the organization did. I told stories of the people the organization had helped. She came in, she got the job, she did great work with them. Her career has taken her elsewhere, but guess what? While she was there, she heard stories, and she saw stories, and she experienced stories. And so even though she's no longer with the organization, she volunteers, she donates. She has kept that organization as a part of her own story. She raises the signal for them every chance she gets, even though she's no longer on staff there, because stories get in deep and stories stay. If you would like to know how to tell your own stories better, I have learned a lot from these fine folks up there. Feel free to take a little screenshot and look them up. Park Howell, The Business of Story. It's mostly storytelling for businesses, but as we all know, a nonprofit is a business. You need resources, right? Anne Handley, she does a lot of things, but her book, Everybody Writes, is an incredible treatise on storytelling. Sometimes you'll collect people's stories, but they're not the best at telling them. They could use a little massaging. So this book will teach you how to do that. Melanie Diesel, she does a lot in the storytelling space, but Content Fuel Framework is her finest work. She has a matrix where at the top it's a whole bunch of topics, and then at the side it's a whole bunch of content types. And you just, roll a 10-sided die and, figure out what kind of content you're going to produce that way, how you're going to tell your story. And then finally, my friend Chris Strub, I know we saw the founder of Giving Tuesday earlier. Chris is the Giving Day guy. So his whole career is he goes around the country to different giving days for organizations that hire him to help them spread the word about their own stories and raise millions of dollars. So look at these fine folks. Look up me too. I am pretty easy to find. I'm Christine Gritman everywhere. And as stated in the intro, I work with companies, organizations, and individuals to help them step into their own professional spotlight and tell their stories in a bigger, bolder way. Thank you so much to United Way for having me, and thank you to all of you for all the great work that you do. Not early, am I? Anyone have any questions? Hi. If anyone does have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Yeah. So the question is regarding negative feedback. How do you handle negative feedback online? And that has a lot to do with the nature of the negative feedback. If it is absolute nonsense, if it's from a bot, if it's something, needlessly hateful, you're not going to look bad if you hide it. Yes, people can maybe click, view hidden comment, but if they see that you hid that, they're not going to judge you for it. The thing that they will judge you for hiding oftentimes is if you hide something that simply disagrees with you or that tries to take you to task to answer a question that you maybe feel is a bit tangential to the situation. That's what people will judge. They'll start saying, oh, you censor anyone who doesn't agree with you. Oh, you don't want to answer the questions, blah, blah, blah. So the best way to handle something like that is oftentimes to respond and to offer to take a conversation private. Maybe take it into DMs, or you can, see if maybe you can take it to some sort of private conversation, or you can just answer it in a very concise way if you're feeling so inclined. But another thing to bear in mind is, who is the person who's giving that feedback? If it's someone who's clearly just kind of one of those accounts online where that seems to be all that they do, because those certainly exist, they're just there to basically troll, then I think you're pretty safe just hiding that, or to ask them a question back that they're not going to answer. But generally speaking, if it's absolute nonsense, if it's abusive, you can feel perfectly fine hiding it. The place where you get judged for hiding it is if it's just a matter of something that maybe is worth a hard conversation that you don't particularly want to have. It can be worth it trying to bring those conversations offline. Or even just a simple, sorry you feel that way. We're out there doing good work, though. Any other questions? Absolutely. One of them is make sure that you've got the right format in the right place. All the social media platforms, kind of all the formats at this point. But the fact is, a video that you put in an Instagram story is a bit different than a video you'd put on YouTube and so forth. So make sure that you're telling the story in a way that fits the format of the platform. Make sure that you're telling your story in a way that starts a conversation, doesn't just end it. So really the goal of anything you put on social media should ideally be to start a conversation or to at least get something going. It should not be consume the content as an end into itself. So also keep an eye towards that. And I'd say the other thing is, really encourage sharing. Encourage other people to share it. If it's something that someone else has told and you are sharing it, that's great too. But, sharing is kind of the greatest strength of something like social media. So do whatever you can to encourage that. Thank you.